The wedding ceremony lasted for 3 days, as was the custom of the people. Thousands of alien nobles gathered in the great crystal halls of the imperial palace on Planet Prime. They wore their finest armor and their most expensive jewels. They brought gifts that cost more than entire planets. They came to witness the bonding of High Commander Callan, the greatest warrior their civilization had ever produced, to her chosen mate. And they came to laugh at him. His name was Murphy. He was 34 years old. He had brown hair that was starting to thin at the top and green eyes that always seemed a little tired. He stood 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighed 165 pounds. He had soft hands and a quiet voice and a habit of apologizing when he bumped into furniture. He was, by every measure they understood, the weakest creature in the room. They were a proud species. They stood between 7 and 9 feet tall, with powerful bodies covered in thick blue skin that could stop a blade. They had 4 arms, each one strong enough to crush stone. Their eyes glowed with inner fire, and their voices could shake buildings when they chose to raise them. They had conquered half the galaxy through strength and will, and the simple fact that nothing could stand against them in battle. Their warriors trained from birth. Their children could lift boulders before they could speak. Their elderly could still fight and win against the young soldiers of lesser species. And now their greatest hero, the woman who had won the battle of the Crimson Nebula and broken the siege of Fortress and personally killed the tyrant of the Outer Reach with her bare hands, had chosen to marry a human. A human. The whispers started before even entered the hall. "Look at him," said Lord Moore, a military commander who had served under for 20 years. "He looks like a child, a sick child." "Perhaps she lost a bet," said Lady Vell, whose family had ruled 3 star systems for 10,000 years. "Perhaps this is some elaborate joke we do not understand." "He will not survive the bonding night," said General, who had never liked humans and did not bother to hide it. "Those creatures break so easily. She will crush him by accident, and then she will come to her senses." They laughed at this. They laughed at many things over those 3 days. They laughed at the way he walked, so slow and careful compared to the powerful strides of the. They laughed at the way he spoke, his voice so soft they had to strain to hear him. They laughed at the way he held his wine glass as if it might bite him. They did not laugh when was watching. Even the boldest noble knew better than to mock her choice to her face. But they laughed the moment she turned away and heard every word. He did not seem to mind. This was the thing that confused the most of all. Murphy should have been ashamed. He should have been terrified. He should have been trying desperately to prove himself worthy of his new wife. Instead, he simply smiled his small smile and nodded politely to everyone he met and asked questions about culture in a tone of genuine interest. When Lord accidentally knocked him into a wall with one arm while reaching for a drink, simply picked himself up, dusted off his formal robes, and asked if the Lord was enjoying the celebration. When Lady told him directly that he was unworthy of the High Commander and should return to his primitive planet in shame, thanked her for her honesty, and asked if she would like to try some of the Earth chocolate he had brought as gifts. When General cornered him in a hallway and demanded to know what sorcery he had used to bewitch their greatest warrior, had simply said that he did not know any sorcery and perhaps the General would like to discuss it with herself. The General had left very quickly after that. On the 3rd night, when the ceremony was complete and Murphy was officially the bonded mate of High Commander Callan, the new couple retired to their chambers. The nobles who remained discussed how long the marriage would last. 1 month, Lord bet. 1 week, Lady countered. He will be dead by morning, General said confidently. None of them won their bets. The marriage lasted. 1 week became 1 month, became 1 year, became 3 years, and Murphy remained alive and apparently content in his role as the husband of the most powerful warrior in the Empire. Callan had not planned to fall in love with a human. She had gone to Earth on a diplomatic mission, nothing more. The humans had recently achieved faster-than-light travel, which meant they were now part of the galactic community whether they were ready or not. The Empire had sent their High Commander to assess the new species and determine if they were worth conquering or if they should simply be ignored. had expected to find primitives. She had expected to find a species barely worth noticing, too weak to matter and too stupid to be interesting. She had found Murphy instead. He was working at a small restaurant in a city called Seattle when she walked in. She had been exploring the planet in disguise, trying to understand humans by observing them in their natural environment. The restaurant was called the Quiet Corner and was both its owner and its only cook. She had ordered food at random, not caring what it was. She had been tired and frustrated after a day of watching humans scurry about their small lives, doing nothing of importance. She had been ready to recommend that her empire ignore this planet entirely. Then brought her a bowl of soup. It was a simple thing, just vegetables and broth and some kind of grain, but something about the way he set it down in front of her made her pause. He moved with a careful grace she had not expected from such a small creature. His hands were steady. His eyes, when they met hers, held no fear. "You look like you have had a difficult day," he said. "This might help." She had stared at him for a long moment, this tiny, fragile human who was not afraid of her even though she could have killed him with one finger. Something in her chest had shifted, a feeling she did not recognize. She had stayed at that restaurant for 6 hours, had talked to her between serving other customers, asking about her home and her work and her life. He had listened when she spoke, really listened, in a way that no one had listened to her in years. He had not tried to impress her or intimidate her or use her for political advantage. He had simply been kind. When she finally left, she found herself thinking about him. She thought about him on the flight back to her ship. She thought about him during her report to the Imperial Council. She thought about him when she was trying to sleep. She went back to the restaurant the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. On the 10th day, asked her to dinner. Not at his restaurant, but at his small apartment above it, where he cooked for her himself and told her stories about his childhood and his family and his dreams. On the 20th day, she told him what she really was. She showed him her true form, 8 feet tall with blue skin and 4 arms and eyes that glowed like stars. She expected him to scream or run or beg for his life. He had looked at her for a long moment, then he had smiled. "That explains why you ate so much soup," he said. She had laughed. She could not remember the last time she had truly laughed. On the 30th day, she asked him to come with her, to leave Earth and join her in the stars, to be her mate, her partner, her husband in the eyes of her people. Had been quiet for a long time. He had looked around his small restaurant, at the life he had built with his own hands, at everything he would be leaving behind. Then he had looked at her, and she had seen something in his eyes that made her hearts beat faster. "Yes," he said, "I will come with you." He had only one condition. He wanted to bring his grandfather's sword. It was an old weapon, a blade of simple steel with a worn leather handle. Kept it wrapped in cloth and stored in a wooden box under his bed. He said his grandfather had given it to him before dying and made him promise to keep it always. Did not understand the attachment. The sword was primitive, useless against modern weapons. But she agreed because she was learning that often had reasons for things that were not immediately obvious. So Murphy packed his few belongings, closed his restaurant, and followed the most powerful warrior in the galaxy to the stars. He did not look back. Life on Prime was not easy for Murphy, but he never complained. The gravity was stronger than Earth's, which meant he had to work harder just to move around. The air was thinner, which meant he got tired more quickly. The food was strange and often too spicy for his human tongue. The language was difficult to learn, full of sounds his throat was not designed to make. And everywhere he went, people stared at him with contempt. The servants of House Callan, the noble family belonged to, did not know what to make of him. They had served warriors for generations, strong and proud who demanded respect and received it. Now they were expected to serve this small, soft creature who said please and thank you and sometimes helped them carry things. At first, they avoided him. They whispered about him in corners and made excuses not to be alone with him. They expected him to be cruel, as the powerful often were to the weak. They expected him to use his position as the High Commander's husband to make their lives difficult. Instead, learned their names. He asked about their families. He remembered their birthdays and their children's names and the small details of their lives that no noble had ever bothered to notice. When the head cook, an elderly woman named, fell ill, spent 3 days caring for her himself. He brought her soup and medicine and sat by her bed reading to her from books she loved. When she recovered, she wept and called him the kindest soul she had ever known. Slowly, the servants began to love him. They protected him when they could, warning him about nobles who meant him harm and steering him away from situations that might be dangerous. They brought him extra food and warmer blankets and small gifts they made themselves. Accepted everything with gratitude and gave kindness in return. It was, the servants decided, just his nature. He could not help being good any more than fire could help being hot. The nobles were a different matter. They never warmed to Murphy. They saw his kindness as weakness and his gentleness as proof that he did not belong among them. They made his life difficult in 1,000 small ways, blocking his path in hallways and excluding him from events and speaking over him as if he was not there. So's mother, the retired Admiral Callan, was the worst of all. She had refused to attend the wedding ceremony. She had refused to acknowledge his existence. She sent messages to her daughter every week, begging her to end this embarrassment and find a proper mate before the family name was ruined forever. Had stopped reading the messages after the first month. Had found them anyway, accessing her personal files because he was worried about the sadness he saw in her eyes. He had read every hateful word his mother-in-law had written. He had said nothing about it. He simply started making his favorite tea in the evenings, sitting with her in silence while she processed whatever was troubling her. She never knew how he always seemed to understand what she needed. She just knew that he did. Had one ritual that he never missed, no matter what else was happening. Every morning he woke before dawn and went to the lowest training hall in House Callan. This hall was meant for children and the elderly, for those too weak to train with the real warriors. It was considered shameful to be seen there. Did not care about shame. He unwrapped his grandfather's sword, the simple steel blade that he had brought all the way from Earth, and he began to practice. His movements were slow and careful. He raised the sword over his head and brought it down in a single clean cut. Then he did it again, and again, and again. He moved through forms that had no names in any language, patterns of movement that seemed almost like dancing. He practiced for 4 hours every morning. He never sparred with anyone. He never tested himself against the combat drones that lined the walls. He simply repeated the same cuts and the same movements thousands of times until his arms ached and his lungs burned and sweat soaked through his simple training clothes. The young warriors sometimes passed by the windows of the training hall on their way to their own exercises. They always stopped to watch and laugh. "Look at the human," they would say. "He thinks he is a warrior. What is he even doing? That is not a real fighting style. Perhaps he is trying to tire himself to death. That would be the kindest end for him." Heard them, he always heard them, but he never responded. He simply continued his practice, moving through his forms as if no one else existed. One morning, a young warrior named decided to have some fun. Was 17 years old, barely more than a child by standards. But he was already 7 feet tall and stronger than most adult humans. He had been raised on stories of great heroes and taught to despise weakness wherever he found it. Murphy, he decided, was the weakest thing he had ever seen. He entered the training hall with 3 of his friends, all of them grinning with anticipation. Was in the middle of a form, his sword raised above his head, his eyes focused on nothing. Human called out, "Are you lost? This hall is for warriors, not pets." Did not respond. He continued his form, bringing the sword down in a smooth arc. "I am speaking to you, pet," moved closer, his forearms flexing with obvious threat. "When a speaks, you answer." Completed his form. Then he lowered his sword and turned to face the young warriors. His expression was calm, almost peaceful. "Good morning," he said. "Can I help you with something?" Laughed, his friends laughed with him. "You can help me by explaining why the High Commander's husband is wasting his time pretending to be a fighter. Do you think that little toy makes you dangerous? Looked down at his grandfather's sword. No, he said simply, I do not think it makes me dangerous. Then why do you play with it every morning? Because my grandfather asked me to. Snorted, your grandfather was a fool, and you are a fool for listening to him. Real warriors do not wave sticks around like children. Real warriors train to kill. Nodded, I understand. Do you? Stepped closer, towering over the small human, because I do not think you do. I think you are an embarrassment to this house and to our species. I think you should go back to your little planet and stop pretending you belong here. Was quiet for a moment, then he spoke in a voice that was gentle but firm. I am sorry you feel that way, he said. I will try not to embarrass you. Had expected defiance or fear. He had not expected this simple acceptance. It made him angry in a way he could not explain. You think you are clever, human? You think your soft words protect you? No, said, I think my wife protects me, and I think you should leave before she learns you came here. His face twisted with rage. He raised one massive fist, ready to strike. And then a voice cut through the air like a blade. The young warrior froze. He turned slowly, knowing already who he would see. High Commander Callan stood in the doorway of the training hall. She was not wearing her armor or carrying her weapons. She was dressed in simple sleeping clothes, as if she had just woken up and come straight here. But the look in her glowing eyes was more terrifying than any weapon. Step away from my husband, she said, now. Stepped away. His friends were already backing toward the door, their faces pale with terror. High Commander stammered, I was only talking to him, I meant no harm. Walked into the room. She moved slowly, deliberately, every step filled with controlled power. She stopped directly in front of and looked down at him. You came into my house, she said quietly. You threatened my mate, and you expect me to believe you meant no harm. I did not threaten him. I just wanted to teach him his place. His place is beside me. Her voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more frightening than a shout. And if you ever forget that again, I will teach you your place. Do you understand? Nodded quickly. Yes, High Commander, I understand. I am sorry. You will apologize to him. Turned to who had been watching the exchange with his usual calm expression. I apologize, he said through gritted teeth. I meant no disrespect. Nodded, apology accepted. I hope you have a good day. And his friends fled the training hall. They never bothered again. When they were gone, turned to her husband. She looked at his tired face and his sweat-soaked clothes and the simple sword in his hands. Her expression softened. Are you all right? She asked. Smiled, I am fine, thank you for coming. How did you know I would come? Wrapped his sword back in its cloth. Because you always know when I need you, just like I always know when you need me. Moved closer to him. She was more than a foot taller than him, and she had to look down to meet his eyes. But somehow, when he looked back at her, she did not feel large and powerful. She felt small and seen. Why do you never fight back? She asked softly. Why do you let them say those things? Was quiet for a moment. Then he reached up and touched her face with one gentle hand. Because fighting them would not change their minds, he said. They would still believe I am weak. They would just add violent to the list of things they hate about me. But you could defend yourself. I have seen you practice. You are better than you pretend to be. Smiled again, but there was something sad in it now. My grandfather used to say that the strongest people are the ones who do not need to prove their strength. He said real power is knowing you could win a fight and choosing not to have one. Your grandfather sounds like a wise man. He lowered his hand. He also said that someday I would face something I could not walk away from, something that threatened the people I love, and when that day came, I should not hold back. Frowned, what did he mean by that? Did not answer. He just picked up his sword and headed for the door of the training hall. Come on, he said, I will make you breakfast. 3 years passed. Murphy became a familiar sight in the halls of House Callan, the strange little human who smiled at everyone and helped the servants and practiced with his sword every morning. The nobles never accepted him, but they stopped openly mocking him. mostly out of fear of, but also because there was something about that made cruelty feel pointless. He was simply too kind to hate properly. His duties kept her busy. She commanded fleets and won battles and negotiated treaties. She was away from home more often than she liked, sometimes for weeks at a time. But she always came back and was always waiting for her, with a warm meal and a quiet conversation and that gentle presence that made everything feel right. She began to depend on him in ways she had never depended on anyone. When the nightmares came, as they always did for soldiers, was there. He held her through the shaking and the crying and the memories of friends she had lost. He never told her to be strong. He never told her to forget. He just stayed with her until the darkness passed. When the political fights became too much, when she wanted to scream at the nobles who cared more about power than people, listened. He asked questions and offered perspectives she had not considered. He helped her see solutions she would have missed on her own. When she felt alone, which was more often than anyone knew, made her feel found. She had never understood why he chose her. She was not gentle or soft or easy to love. She was a warrior built for violence, trained to kill, but looked at her and saw something else, something she had almost forgotten existed. He saw the girl she had been before the wars started, the girl who liked to read poetry and watch the stars and dream of a life that was not filled with blood. He made her feel like that girl still existed somewhere inside her. And she loved him for it more than she could ever say. The attack came on a quiet evening when nothing was supposed to happen. Was returning from a campaign in the outer territories. Her fleet of 40 ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, ready to dock at the orbital station and finally come home. They found the station on fire. The Devourer fleet had come. 200 ships from the darkness between galaxies, crewed by creatures that no one had ever seen and lived to describe. They were called the Devourers because they consumed everything in their path, not for resources or territory, but simply because destruction was their nature. They had appeared without warning and attacked without mercy. The orbital defenses had fallen in minutes. The planetary shields were failing. Millions of civilians were dying on the surface below. All units engage, commanded from the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Flame. Protect the planet at all costs. The battle that followed was the worst of her life. Her 40 ships against their 200. Her trained warriors against creatures that felt no pain and knew no fear. For hours they fought, burning through space in a chaos of weapons fire and exploding ships and screaming death. Killed dozens of enemy vessels herself, leading from the front as she always did. Her crew fought with desperate courage, knowing that their families were on the planet below, knowing that failure meant the end of everything they loved. Slowly, impossibly, they began to win. The Devourer ships were powerful but mindless. They attacked without strategy, without coordination. Used this weakness against them, drawing them into traps and picking them off one by one. After 6 hours, the Devourer fleet broke. Their surviving ships fled back into the darkness, leaving behind the wreckage of their dead. His fleet had lost 17 ships and thousands of crew, but the planet was safe. She had won. The cheers of her crew filled the bridge. Officers were hugging each other, crying with relief. They had survived the unsurvivable. Did not cheer. She was staring at her screens, reading reports from the surface, searching for one piece of information. House Callan, status unknown. Her blood went cold. Get me a shuttle, she ordered, now. The shuttle landed in the courtyard of House Callan 20 minutes later. Was out the door before it finished touching down, running toward the main building with her heart pounding in her chest. The house was damaged. Scorch marks covered the walls. Several windows were shattered. Bodies of servants and guards lay scattered across the grounds. As she whispered, she burst through the main doors and found chaos inside. Furniture was overturned. Art was destroyed. More bodies littered the floor. And in the center of the main hall, surrounded by dead servants and broken furniture, she found Murphy. He was sitting on the floor with his back against a pillar. His simple clothes were torn and dirty. His face was bruised and bleeding. His grandfather's sword lay across his lap, still in its cloth wrapping. Dropped to her knees beside him. "Are you hurt? What happened?" Looked up at her. His eyes were tired but calm, the same eyes that had looked at her in that little restaurant on Earth all those years ago. "I am all right," he said, "just resting." Looked around at the destruction. "What happened here? Where are the attackers?" Pointed toward the hallway that led to the private chambers. 3 of them got past the guards. They were heading for the family quarters. His breath caught the family quarters, where the children of House Callan slept, where his young nieces and nephews lived. "The children," she said, "are they safe?" Nodded. "They are safe. I made sure of it." Stared at him. "How? How did you stop 3 Devourer soldiers? They are twice your size and immune to pain." Was quiet for a moment. Then he reached down and picked up his grandfather's sword. Slowly, carefully, he unwrapped it. The blade was glowing. Not brightly, not dramatically. Just a soft white light that seemed to come from deep within the steel. It pulsed gently like a heartbeat, like a living thing. Had seen many wonders in her life. She had traveled the galaxy and witnessed things that explanation, but she had never seen anything like this. She whispered, "What is that?" Looked at the glowing sword for a long moment. Then he looked at his wife. "My grandfather," he said slowly, "was not an ordinary man. He was part of an order that has existed on Earth for thousands of years. They called themselves the Keepers of the Light. They guarded humanity against threats that most people never knew existed." Did not know what to say, she just listened. "When I was young," continued, "my grandfather trained me. He taught me everything he knew. The sword forms, the meditation, the way of seeing the world that allows the light to flow through you. He said I had a gift for it. He said I was the strongest keeper he had ever seen." "But you never told me," said. "In 3 years, you never told me any of this." Smiled sadly, because it did not matter. The keepers are not warriors who fight for glory. We are guardians who wait. We live ordinary lives and help the people around us and never reveal what we are until the moment comes when we have no choice. And tonight was that moment. Yes, looked down at the sword again. The light woke up when the Devourers came. It knew what they were. It knew they had to be stopped. "What are they? What did the light show you?" His expression grew dark. "They are not from this universe," he said. "They come from a place between dimensions, a void of hunger and emptiness. They consume because consumption is all they are, and if they are not stopped, they will eventually devour everything." Everything. Every star, every planet, every living thing in every galaxy met her eyes. They are the end of all things, and they have been watching humanity for a very long time. Felt a chill run down her spine. Why humanity? Because humans are the only species that can create keepers. Something in our nature, something in the way we exist, allows us to channel the light. Shook his head. "I do not understand why. My grandfather did not either. But it is true. Humans are the only thing the Devourers truly fear." Looked around at the destroyed hall, at the bodies of the creatures had killed, at the gentle light still pulsing in his blade. "Show me," she said. "Show me what you did." Was quiet for a moment, then he nodded and rose to his feet. They walked through the halls of House Callan, past the damage and the death, until they reached the corridor that led to the family quarters. 3 Devourer soldiers lay dead on the floor. They were massive creatures, nearly 10 feet tall, with bodies made of shadow and hunger. Their shapes were wrong somehow, as if they did not entirely belong in normal space. Even dead, they radiated a sense of wrongness that made want to look away. Stood beside her, his glowing sword in his hand. "They came through the wall," he said, pointing to a hole in the corridor. "I heard the children screaming and I ran." Looked at the dead creatures. Then she looked at her husband, this small, soft human she had married 3 years ago. "How?" she asked. "How did you beat them?" Raised his sword. "The light showed me how." He began to move. His form was different now. Gone was the slow, careful practice she had watched every morning. In its place was something fluid and beautiful and terrifying. He flowed through movements that seemed to bend space itself, the glowing blade tracing patterns in the air that hurt to look at directly. and as he moved, understood. This was not fighting. This was not combat as she knew it. This was something older and deeper, something that reached beyond the physical world into territories she could not name. Murphy was not just a man with a sword. He was a conduit for something vast and ancient and powerful beyond measure. When he finished, he was breathing hard, but his eyes were calm. The light faded from his blade, and he was just her husband. My grandfather said the light chooses its bearers carefully, said softly. It looks for people who do not want power, people who would rather live quietly and help others, people who will only fight when there is no other choice. Is that why you never fought back? Asked. All those times they mocked you and threatened you, you could have destroyed them, but you just smiled and walked away. Nodded, the light is not for showing off. It is not for winning arguments or proving points. It is for protecting what matters when nothing else can. Felt tears forming in her eyes. She was not sure why. Callan, the greatest warrior in the Empire, did not cry. But standing here looking at this man she had somehow been lucky enough to marry, she could not stop them. Why did you not tell me? She asked. I would have understood. Reached up and touched her face gently. Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for what I can do. He smiled that quiet smile, and you did. You loved me when everyone said I was weak and worthless. You loved me without knowing any of this. I still love you, she whispered. I know, smile grew warmer, and I love you. That is why I am here. That is why I will always be here, to protect you and everyone you care about for as long as I live. Pulled him into an embrace, holding him tight against her with all four of her arms. He was so small compared to her, so fragile seeming. But she knew now that he was the strongest person she had ever met. Not because of the light, not because of the sword. Because of his heart. Word of what happened at house, Callan spread quickly through the Empire. The servants had seen everything. They had hidden and watched as Murphy faced the three Devourer soldiers alone. They had seen the light explode from his sword like a son being born. They had seen him move through the creatures like they were shadows, like they were nothing, like they had never stood a chance. They told everyone what they had witnessed. Within days, the story reached the Imperial Council. Within weeks, it had spread to every corner of the Empire. The human husband of High Commander, the one everyone called weak and worthless, had killed 3 Devourer soldiers in single combat. No one had ever killed a Devourer soldier before. Their ships had been destroyed in battle, yes, but the soldiers themselves were considered unkillable. They regenerated from any wound. They felt no pain. They never stopped fighting until their physical forms were completely destroyed. Had destroyed 3 of them in less than a minute. The nobles did not know what to say. Lord, who had laughed at on his wedding day, now walked the other way when he saw him coming. Lady, who had called him unworthy, sent a formal letter of apology along with expensive gifts. General, who had cornered him in a hallway and demanded answers, requested a private meeting to personally beg forgiveness. Accepted all the apologies graciously. He kept none of the gifts, distributing them instead to the servants who had served him faithfully for 3 years. He did not change. He still smiled at everyone. He still helped with the cooking. He still practiced his sword forms every morning in the training hall. But now, when the young warriors passed by the windows, they did not laugh. They watched in silence, trying to memorize his movements, hopping to learn even a fraction of what he knew. Mother, Admiral Callan, came to visit for the first time since the wedding. She arrived without warning, landing her personal shuttle in the courtyard and marching into the house as if she owned it. Servants scattered before her. Guards stood at attention. Everyone knew the Admiral's reputation for harsh judgment and harsher words. She found in the garden, tending to the small plot of earth vegetables he had cultivated over the years. Human, she said. Looked up from his tomatoes. Admiral, it is good to see you. Stared at him for a long moment. She was old by standards, nearly 400 years, but she was still tall and strong and terrifying. Her eyes burned with a fire that had intimidated warriors and nobles and emperors. Just smiled at her. I came to speak with you, said finally, about what you did. Of course, stood up and brushed the dirt from his hands. Would you like some tea? I just made a pot. Did not know how to respond to this. She had expected defiance or fear or at least some acknowledgement of the tension between them. She had not expected a tea invitation. Very well, she said. They sat in small kitchen, surrounded by the herbs he grew and the cooking tools he used, looked around at the modest space and felt something she could not name. You killed 3 devourers, she said. Yes. No one has ever done that. So I have been told. Leaned forward, how? Was quiet for a moment. Then he told her. He told her everything he had told about his grandfather and the keepers of the light and the ancient duty that had been passed down through his family for generations. When he finished, was silent for a very long time. I hated you, she finally said. From the moment I learned my daughter had chosen you, I hated you. I thought you were weak. I thought you were a stain on our family honor. I thought you would bring us nothing but shame. Nodded, I know. I was wrong. The words seemed to cost something, as if she was not used to admitting mistakes. I was wrong about everything. You are not weak. You are stronger than anyone I have ever known. Thank you. I do not understand you, human, shook her head. Why did you let us treat you that way? Why did you never fight back, never defend yourself? You could have shown us the truth at any time. Smiled, would you have believed me? Considered this. No, she admitted, I would have thought it was a trick. Exactly, poured her more tea. The truth is not something that can be told. It has to be seen. It has to be experienced. If I had shown you the light on my wedding day, you would have found some way to dismiss it. But now, after 3 years of watching me, after seeing me live as an ordinary man without pretense or pride, you know who I really am. Looked at him with new eyes. Who are you? I am Murphy, he said simply. I am a man who loves his wife and tries to be kind to everyone he meets. The light is part of me, but it does not define me. I would rather be known for my kindness than my power. Felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them away angrily. She was not someone who cried. My daughter is lucky to have you, she said. Smile grew warm. I am lucky to have her. She saw something in me when everyone else saw nothing. She chose me when the entire galaxy told her not to. That kind of love is rarer than any power in the universe. Stood up, she walked around the table, and for the first time placed a hand on shoulder. Welcome to the family, she said, officially this time. Looked up at her, this woman who had despised him for 3 years, and he smiled. Thank you, Mother. The news of Murphy spread beyond the Empire. It reached other species, other civilizations, other corners of the galaxy. Everyone wanted to know about the human who had killed the unkillable. Delegations came from distant worlds. Scientists wanted to study him. Warriors wanted to challenge him. Leaders wanted to form alliances with him. Refused them all. I am not a weapon to be studied, he told the scientists. I am not a trophy to be won, he told the warriors. I am not a political tool, he told the leaders. He was just a man who tended his garden and cooked for his wife and practiced his sword forms every morning. The devourers did not forget him either. They sent scouts to observe the system. They gathered intelligence on the human who had destroyed their soldiers. They reported back to whatever dark masters commanded them in the void between dimensions. Knew they were watching. He could feel their presence sometimes, a cold hunger at the edge of his awareness. The light warned him when they were near, showing him shadows that should not exist. He did not tell anyone. He did not want to cause panic. But he prepared. Every morning, his practice grew a little longer. Every night, his meditation grew a little deeper. He was connecting with the light in ways he had never achieved before, learning secrets his grandfather had only hinted at. He knew with absolute certainty that the devourers would return. And when they did, he would be ready. One evening, came home from a council meeting to find standing on the balcony of their chambers, looking up at the stars. She joined him, sliding her arms around him from behind. What are you thinking about? She asked. Was quiet for a moment, then he spoke. Do you know why the light chose humanity? Shook her head against his back. Because we are small, said. Because we are weak. Because we have no natural weapons, no armor, no special powers. We are soft and fragile and we die so easily. That seems like a reason not to choose you. Smiled, that is what everyone thinks, but the light sees things differently. It knows that the species who have power from birth never learn to appreciate it. They take strength for granted. They use it carelessly. Humans are different. We have to fight for everything. We have to work and struggle and sacrifice just to survive. And because of that, we understand something the powerful species never do. What is that? That strength is not about what you can do. It is about what you choose to do. Turn to face his wife. The light is not a weapon. It is a responsibility. It exists to protect, not to conquer. And it chose humans because we understand what it means to need protection. We understand what it means to be helpless and afraid and desperate for someone to save us. Looked into his eyes. She saw no pride there, no boasting, just simple truth. You really believe that, she said. I know it, reached up and touched her face. Every time I use the light, I feel the weight of it, all the lives it has saved, all the sacrifices the keepers before me made. They could have used their power to become rulers and conquerors. Instead, they lived quietly and helped their neighbors and waited for the moment when they were truly needed. Like you did. Like I did, smiled. My grandfather told me once that the true test of a person is what they do when no one is watching. I spent 3 years being mocked and dismissed and treated like nothing. And every day I chose to be kind anyway. Not because I was trying to prove something, but because kindness is who I am. Pulled him close. I love you, she said. I love you so much it hurts. I know, held her tight. I love you too, and I will always be here to protect you, no matter what comes. They stood together on the balcony, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there in the darkness between galaxies, the devourers were waiting, gathering their strength, planning their return. But Murphy was not afraid. He had the light, he had his sword. He had the love of a woman who saw him for who he truly was. And when the darkness came, he would face it. Not because he wanted glory or recognition or power, but because it was right. Because protecting the innocent was what the light was for. Because his grandfather had given him a gift and a responsibility, and he would honor both until his last breath. The stars twinkled above them, vast and cold and indifferent, but in the warm circle of his arms felt safe. She was the greatest warrior in the galaxy. She had won battles that would be remembered for 10,000 years. But her husband, this small, soft human everyone had called weak, was the strongest person she had ever known. And she would never let him go. The next morning, woke before dawn and went to the training hall, just as he always did. He unwrapped his grandfather's sword, and he began to practice. The young warriors watched from the windows, silent and respectful. The servants passed by and whispered blessings for his safety. Stood in the doorway and smiled at the man she loved. Murphy moved through his forms, slow and careful and patient. The sword caught the first light of the rising sun. And just for a moment it glowed.